Well, let's begin. Jordan, fill us in on how you even came across MOTUM. How did you hear about us?
Yeah, well, actually, it's my wife, Millie. She found you guys on Instagram, I think. Yeah, she thought it'd be something cool to try, the 12-week program, and we obviously did that in 2022. Yeah, Billy Dowling, a teammate of mine and Millie's cousin, joined in with us. Obviously, I met yourself through that, and we were able to connect and start doing some individual stuff. But yeah, that was kind of the base of how we started doing it.
Yeah, awesome. And I remember you, back then also the instructor had no idea who you were, which was probably a blessing in disguise.
It was great, yeah.
Tell us about the grading. So one part of the MOTUM journey we do is we do a pretty difficult grading process. We get a score. But yeah, tell us maybe about that grading and then what you kind of perhaps just started to discover in doing these different forms of movement within your own body and your own self that you maybe hadn't picked up on or weren't as aware of.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the movements required, smaller muscle movements, and I find that obviously being an athlete, I can kind of muscle my way through a lot of different movements and different strength exercises, but I've struggled to really engage in those smaller movements, and I found my scoring was pretty low. I think, is it out of 40?
Yeah, it was out of 42.
I think I was like mid to low 20s.
Yeah.
And even a couple of the exercises which I thought I'd be good at, the calf raises and those things, I was actually really bad. So it was pretty humbling, to be honest. I realised I wasn't moving as well as I wanted to, and found a real love for movement and trying to get through that soreness, especially in season, but also just moving it as best as I possibly can as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I remember you mentioned first time I saw you sitting in that shin box position. You're like, get me out of here. It wasn't a comfortable position to be in, and there was a few of those balance type positions, what we would consider hip control, that kind of I guess left you a bit exposed. And I think since then you finished that kind of 12-week program. And like, how did you find that just doing those weekly classes, because that was right in the thick of the season? When you go back, like you would, like game to game, it would have been a hard thing to squeeze into your week by week program. But how did you find that?
It was challenging just because it was something that I hadn't obviously done before. I've always enjoyed yoga and stretching and different types of things, but I did struggle with a little bit of soreness and stuff just from games, and then following up with a new kind of movement pattern and exercises, I did struggle a little bit. But obviously now that I've done it for over a year now, it's something that I'm used to, but it was a bit of a challenge at the time.
So we did that, and then we had our opportunity first time to kind of work together more intensively one-on-one in that pre-season, or the post-season leading into the pre-season. That's when we started cranking the movements up a notch. And I remember, we spent a lot of time doing the one-on-one sessions a few times a week. You were doing a lot of homework as well. That's when we saw the most significant change in your mobility, your control, and your movement patterns made a dramatic change in that period of time. And then we kind of led into, going into last season. So maybe for us, give us a bit of background of just like what your body feels like normally in a season, game to game, when you're into it, and give us like a bit of an understanding of just what that season entails for the body from when it starts to that whole journey or the whole way through.
Yeah, I mean, pre-season is probably a 3-month block where we're doing sort of 40 Ks a week. With that's just running, and then with that there's obviously a lot of contest drills, a lot of body contact, not as much as you would get obviously from games in season, but you're starting to build into that contact stuff over the December-January period. And then I find that when games come along, you kind of get a bit sore to start with because you're not used to the real heated contact, but then sort of that first half of the season, I find generally I feel pretty good. I feel fit. I'm still pretty lean and fit from the pre-season. Once that middle part of the season comes, I've found the last probably 3 or 4 years of playing consistent AFL footy that whether it's form or body or whatever it is, it sometimes drops away a little bit because I'm a bit sore. You're coming in off the back of a big game on a Saturday night, and then you might play the Friday night and the next week, and you get 1 day off, and then you're back in the club Monday, then you're training Tuesday. So you got a pretty quick turnaround, and especially if you get a little niggle, couple of knocks or something on the legs, that kind of builds up, and you kind of carry that through week to week, and you're kind of just adding different layers of soreness, and you're dealing with all these different things. But I found, especially in season, doing MOTUM with you, Matt, obviously we were doing it pretty much every Tuesday. It was a good way to flush out some soreness and get the body going again. As you know, my back and hips and stuff can get pretty jammed up. So for me, it was just about dialing it back a little bit in season, but trying to do as much as I could depending on how I felt. And that's where I found I probably felt the best I have back half of the year, especially over the last 3 years. Definitely this season gone was the best I've felt in the last few rounds, because largely to do with the movement stuff, I think.
Yeah, awesome. I think too, like if we dive into like how we did that, it's good to kind of break that down a little bit. I remember we were definitely mid-season. You were just like, here it comes. The wave of the body is just starting to feel like extremely stiff, extremely sore after games, and way harder to get through basic movements. So from my perspective, it was like simple movements, like just getting up, on off the ground, like literally just rolling from one side to the other, just sitting up and doing what we would consider like very basic movements that you could do so well in the preseason. They started to become challenging. So I remember we had to really think about your weeks and what you did almost the next day after the game or the following day. And that's when we started to put way more structure into how you would manage your movement and your mobility, really. And I think that's when we started to turn that corner mid-season. So maybe tell us what work you'd have to put in to just get your body ready, just so that you could go to training and feel, like your body's moving normally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, like, it might sound a bit dramatic, but sometimes the day after a game, like sometimes, especially the night games, you get minimal sleep because you're so wired from a pretty hectic game and just the adrenaline and everything. And like some mornings you wake up the next day and like I could honestly barely walk. And then, so to get from that to playing the next week, I was able to sort of turn the corner pretty quick. But like that, say Tuesday, the Sunday, Monday is just recovery, ice baths, like real low level stretching, like some basic rolling patterns, but not really testing it too much. And then the Tuesday when we would catch up, that was when obviously we'd break down how I was feeling. You'd basically help me do those rolling patterns and get the body going. And a lot of the time it was my back and hips that were pretty jammed up, and every Tuesday was different, really, wasn't it? Like, it was just seeing how I felt, what I felt like I could do, what you would try and push me to do. But I was kind of willing to push through as much as I could because I knew it would help me get up for the training the next day. So yeah, it was basically any rolling patterns, especially shin boxes. That was probably the big one. Some real low level flows, but yeah, it was pretty basic. And then we'd have our main session on the next day, on the Wednesday, and then day off I'd try and do a little bit more. Similar thing on the Thursday is usually our day off, and I'd try and do a bit more high level kind of flows and stuff. And then day before the game, that would be a similar thing. And then Saturday, game day, I would try and do a little bit in the morning, but then especially before the game in the change rooms, I'd do just some pretty, not high level, but just more active flows and just really just loosen the back up. That was kind of my big thing, was trying to get my back and hips really firing. When
you're sitting there game day, what would be like just some of the go-to movements that you like to do to just feel like your body's ready to tackle the game?
Any rolling patterns on my stomach I find are really good, and then definitely shin boxes, and then to the half kneel and then reset the hip back down just for my hip stability. I find those small muscles around my hips take a little bit to fire up. So, and I think just the coordination of that, especially game day, there's something mental there where I just want to feel like I'm really coordinated and in sync with my body. So that were probably the key kind of movements that I'll do, especially before a game.
Yeah, awesome. And they've come a long way since they first started. I remember you were just saying, all right, Jordan, you've got to master balancing on one foot basically in a kneeling position and just slowly drop down to the ground. Yeah. And that was like, used to just be a bit of a collapsing thud to the ground. But yeah, to see, I think you came back, you're like, Matty, I reckon I've mastered this, watch this. And it's been awesome to watch how much you've grown and developed. Since then, so now we're doing a new preseason. So preseason is just about to start. We've thrown some more different movements your way. I mean, it's been great to see some of the other Crows guys jump on board. I think just where movement and stretching and mobility fits in sport over your experience and the stuff that we're doing. Maybe just talk on maybe why it's different or where it's different or how it's different, and just your thoughts on, you know, this combination of movement training, like what we're doing, and how you think, or where you think that should be sitting in sports. And
like I said, I've always enjoyed and been interested in different kind of stretching and
Pilates.
I love Pilates. Yeah, my partner Millie, she's a Pilates instructor. Now she's a school teacher, but she was a Pilates instructor, and we used to do yoga a fair bit when I was living in Sydney. So it's something that I've always kind of been interested in, but I feel like the MOTUM stuff is different. It's a more of a high level kind of movement and flows, and especially the animal movement stuff. I really enjoy that, and I find, and especially when I started, I'm obviously very competitive person, and especially with myself, and I felt like it was something that I was lacking, obviously just through the scores that we did in the 12-week program. But even when I'd do it, I didn't feel like I could successfully do a lot of the movements, and that annoyed me a lot. So I really wanted to build up my movement and kind of not master it, but get a lot better at it. And I feel like it's something that's definitely helped my footy. You know, I feel a lot better, obviously back end of the year, but even pre-season, in season, I feel like my body's holding up really well. And it's just one of those things, mentally, I feel a lot fresher, and I feel like I'm able to play better footy. So
if we think about like even those reasons why it's not about, you know, how far you can just stretch a body part, it's more how well you can control it. And for you to feel like there's a sense of like confidence in where your body is, and you've got control over, you know, the way that it's moving and operating. Improving that operating system is like a huge goal of what we're trying to do for everyone. But it's great to see that, yeah, from an athletic perspective. From here, goals coming into next season for you, what are you really maybe hoping to kind of get out of either movement or your own body to work on this season and then into next season?
Yeah, well, obviously we're about to start pre-season. So for me, for starters, I just want to make sure that I'm able to like perform in the pre-season at a high level. And to do that, it's like I said, I do a little bit of Pilates, but then obviously a lot of this movement stuff and keeping the body as fresh as I can. And that's probably as simple as it is at this stage. Yeah, for me, it's about staying fit and healthy, and also progressing in some of these movements that we've just started doing, a lot of the lizard crawls and yeah, those sorts of things. So that's where I'm kind of trying to progress to. And then that's my main goal, is to progress in a few different movements and stay fit and healthy.
I think like lastly is just like a little intake from me on the inside. It's like, just the demand that you guys are put under is unbelievable. You know, it's like this is your kind of time off, but how hard you're pushing, and just to constantly keep your body healthy, like from now through the season, just appreciating how hard that is.
That's where I've found like this mobility and movement training that we've been doing, especially with AFL, but a lot of sports like that 360-degree sport where you can get hit from all angles. Obviously, I'm jumping a lot, I'm on the ground a lot, so there's making sure you master all those different kind of movements, standing up and on the ground, which is what we've been doing. That's why I feel like it's helped me a lot, is because our sport is just so unique that you kind of need to be good in all areas. I wish I could have a personal trainer with me 24/7 like LeBron, but you're around a fair bit, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, twice a week.
Definitely enough.
Yeah, it's good enough. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.